Hello and welcome to DDR's second explainer video. In this one we're going to take a look at ISRO's Reusable Launch Vehicle program. India's current satellite launch vehicle workhorse is the PSLV or Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, which can launch 1.7 tons to SSPO orbit. On the back of successful development of cryogenic engine technology, the GSLV, Geostationary Satellite Launch Vehicle, has also emerged as a launcher that can place a payload of 5 tons to low Earth orbit LEO or 2.5 tons to GTO. The cryogenic upper stage in the GSLV has a CE 7.5 engine which burns liquid hydrogen with liquid oxygen to generate 75 kilonewtons of thrust. ISRO will also start launching satellites using the Small Satellite Launch Vehicle SSLV. This 3-stage solid rocket motor propelled launch vehicle will be able to launch 500 kilos into LEO and 300 kilos into SSO on demand at a very low cost. It will cater primarily to the global small, micro and nanosat market. Going forward, ISRO plans to develop new engines and heavier launch vehicles with a plan to launch more than 10 tons to LEO. TSTO, or a two-stage to orbit, has been the goal for many launch agencies. Launching payloads and then returning to Earth, where they will be refurbished within a short period and then reused, has been the aim for next generation launchers. The concept of a reusable launch vehicle is to obtain low-cost space access, short turnaround time, as well as not adding to space debris. The amount of debris in space is not quite appreciated by a lot of people. Take a look. It is a growing headache for space agencies around the world and companies who are working on mitigating measures. Private companies have taken a lead in the area of reusable launch vehicles, with SpaceX's Falcon 9 as well as Blue Origin's New Shepard, which have proven boosters that return to land, which can be serviced and reused. Among the multiple plans studied in ISRO for a full-fledged reusable launch system, one of them is this configuration. It is a two-stage system with a first stage called Admire that will return to the ground after stage separation, seemingly similar to the SpaceX Falcon 9's first stage. And the second stage will be the full-scale wing body vehicle, the RLV. ISRO hasn't yet finalized the configuration for the RLV yet, but the front runner is this one. It will be powered by a reusable semi-cryo SC500 engine with a 500-ton propellant loading of LOX kerosene combination and a cryogenic orbiter with a C50 engine, with the top portion landing separately using thrusters or parachutes. The aim is to deliver a payload of 10 tons to low Earth orbit. ISRO began working on a scaled-down wing body technology demonstrator testbed called the RLV-TD to develop critical technologies required to build a reusable launch vehicle. This TD would enable studies on hypersonic aerothermodynamics of a wing body, evaluation of thermal protection systems and hot structures, as well as re-entry guidance, navigation, and control. ISRO planned to perform test flights to evaluate these technologies developed for the RLV with a hypersonic flight experiment HEX, landing experiment LEX, return flight experiment REX, and a scramjet propulsion experiment SPEX. ISRO conducted the hypersonic experiment on May 23, 2016 from Sriharikota. After a vertical rise to clear the tower, the vehicle followed an optimum wind-biased gravity turn trajectory till booster separation. The booster burnt out at 96 seconds at 33 km altitude. After burnout, the booster and the TDV continued in a combined course till the dynamic pressure fell sufficiently to allow for a safe separation at around 44 km. After separation, the TDV continued its unpowered course to peak altitude of 65 km and then started the descent mission. During descent, the vehicle flew in a predetermined optimum Mach versus angle of attack program till it reached Mach number 2 at around 20 km, from where the closed loop guidance took over and a safe touchdown in the Bay of Bengal around 550 km from Sriharikota was achieved. The TD performed hypersonic flight and then a simulated landing at a height above the water surface, sending back images prior to hitting the water. Let's take a closer look at the TD now. Some of the key challenges in arriving at a configuration for the TDV were meeting a required lift to drag ratio at hypersonic to low subsonic Mach numbers with a wide range of angles of attack to limit the deceleration levels and wing loading, as well as achieving sufficient downrange as well as cross-range control. Longitudinal, lateral and directional controllability using control surfaces, the LV9 rudder, in the high dynamic pressure region. Reasonable lift to drag ratio at low speeds to limit sink rate before landing. Leading edge heating, as well as minimizing the center of pressure movement with change in Mach number. Sizing fin during ascent and ensuring controllability in all axes. Flat fuselage surface in the windward side for placement of tiles and possible air-breathing engine integration in future. Sufficient fuselage volume to accommodate all subsystems was a given. The TDV is a 1800 kg wing body with double delta wing having a hypersonic LD ratio of 2.5. The TDV configuration was arrived after 2 years of studies and design work. The wing body configuration was selected to provide high aerodynamic efficiency. Lifting bodies have low lift to drag ratio and hence low cross and downrange gliding ability. On the other hand, wing body configuration has high LD ratio in subsonic as well as hypersonic speeds, which gives better cross and downrange gliding ability. Many configurations with a single fin were considered initially, akin to the space shuttle. Fuselage with ogive shaped forebody, low aspect ratio double delta wing, and a single vertical tail was the first configuration for which extensive wind tunnel testing was carried out. A drooped nose was designed to facilitate a future manned requirement if needed. Detailed assessment of each configuration and aerothermodynamic characterization was carried out using in-house developed engineering methods, computational fluid dynamics tools, and national wind tunnel facilities. For better longitudinal stability and reduced directional instability in supersonic and hypersonic regime, a blunt, canted ogive nose cone was chosen for the forebody. Elevons, which combine the function of elevator and ailerons, perform pitch and roll controls. At high angles of attack, a single vertical tail was found to be directionally unstable. So twin, swept canted vertical tails with double wedge airfoil section was chosen to improve directional stability and controllability at high angles of attack. The rudder also acts as a speed brake and for pitch trim during supersonic speeds, similar to the Su-30 MKI. For RLV characterization, 3 meter by 2.5 meter low subsonic speed continuous wind tunnel at IIT Kanpur, 4.27 meter by 2.74 meter low speed wind tunnel at IISc Bengaluru, 1.2 meter trisonic wind tunnel at NAL Bangalore, and 0.25 and 1 meter hypersonic wind tunnel at VSSC Trivandrum were used. 17 scaled down models were fabricated and tested. The wing airfoil was derived from NACA 0012 with flat bottom surface. The reflex airfoil is S-shaped with negative camber for the aft 20% of the chord length to reduce the pitch down moment and bring it close to zero about the aerodynamic center. The airfoil thickness to chord ratio was varied from 10 to 12% from root to tip of the wingspan. The wing planform area was reduced without sacrificing lift requirements. The wing has a double delta planform with 80-degree leading edge strake angle and 45-degree main wing leading edge angle. The 80-45-degree wing planform delays the wing stall and reduces the center of pressure movement over the operating range of Mach numbers. The wing has an aspect ratio of 2.16. 3-degree dihedral angle wing tip section is at a higher level than the wing root section, and a wingspan 0.55 times the vehicle length. 12. Reaction Control System Thrusters (RCS) provide 3-axis controls during low dynamic pressure conditions. Pitch RCS thrusters are placed in the aft fuselage top and bottom surfaces, yaw thrusters at the aft fuselage side panels, and roll RCS thrusters in the top and bottom surfaces of the wing. The fuselage has a blunt ogive forebody followed by a D-section fuselage. The D-section with semicircle top and a box-type bottom makes TPS, Thermal Protection System tile application easy. It also allows for a blended low wing design which reduces aerodynamic heating. The TDV was statically stable in the operating angles of attack ranging from Mach 2 to low speeds, whereas it was statically unstable at higher Mach numbers. The vehicle was directionally stable with positive C and beta from low speeds up to low supersonic Mach number, above which it was directionally unstable. This characteristic was similar to the observations for the Space Shuttle as well as the X-34. To cater to such stability, switchover flight control was through the deflection of aileron from stage separation up to touchdown, and the rudder was used in the high dynamic pressure phase of descent flight. Intense heat generated during flight is dissipated by heat sinks, where a high thermal conductivity material absorbs the heat and distributes it quickly and uniformly away from the part of the spacecraft it was designed to protect. Active cooling. In high heat flux areas, fluids can be used as a liquid or gaseous heat sink when distributed to hot sections via a cooling loop. The proposed cooling fluids include liquid metals like sodium or potassium, as well as gaseous hydrogen cooling. Transpiration cooling involves ejection of a fluid or gas through a porous skin into the boundary layer between the heat flux and the surface, thus reducing the adiabatic wall temperature of the surface. Radiation cooling. In this, most of the heat flux is reflected back towards the black body of space by a high emissivity coating on the protected substrate. And finally, ablation. It is an effective mechanism of minimizing total energy that the vehicle absorbs. Thus, heat is expended in a material phase change rather than being conducted to the interior of the vehicle. Thermostructural, infrared heating, shear flow, and plasma wind tunnel tests were carried out for qualifying the hot structures as well as TPS. Materials and their thicknesses were designed for various parts for meeting the temperature constraints based on simulation of 3D thermal response. Nose cap, wing leading edge, aileron, vertical tail, and rudder were designed as hot structures which use TPS like silica tile and flexible insulation used in the space recovery experiment. The carbon-carbon nose cap of the RLV is attached with an aluminum alloy ring through molybdenum bracket, molybdenum bolt, and a molybdenum nut. These are dissimilar metals having different coefficients of thermal expansion which have been attached. It was necessary to ensure that this interface stood up to the temperatures faced during re-entry. The airframe is formed primarily from aluminum alloy that can withstand up to 350 Fahrenheit without softening. Re-entry causes surface temperature of greater than 1000 degrees centigrade. To protect this frame, flexible thermal protection material is used on the leeward region where the surface is curved. This has silica cloth layers on either side with ERA blanket felt sandwiched and stitched together using quartz thread. A ceramic coating for thermal protection was also developed. Room temperature curability, ease of application, minimum weight, durability, erosion resistance, stable optical characteristics, easily repairable, non-contaminating, high purity, high temperature compatibility with silica fabric were key considerations during development. Silica binder and silica powder were used for the coating. An FEI blanket was supplied by Advanced Materials and Ceramics Division VSSC, which was waterproofed, bonded by Polymers and Special Chemical Division before applying the ceramic coating. Composite ultra high temperature ceramics UHTC are being developed at the moment to replace the silica tiles being used for the TDV. Zirconium diborate ZRB2, hafnium diboride HFB2, and silicon carbide composite materials which possess high thermal conductivity, thermal shock resistance, high temperature mechanical properties, and oxidation resistance are the prime candidates. These composites can withstand temperatures around 2000 degrees centigrade and will be used for hypersonic vehicles like the RLV. Beryllium-rich aluminum alloys are also being developed to replace current aluminum alloys due to their promising features like lightweight, high thermal conductivity, high specific stiffness, etc. The vehicle experiences the flight environment of an upper stage in a launch vehicle during its ascent phase and then the flight conditions of an aircraft during its descent phase. The structural design of the RLV airframe demands an approach similar to that of aircraft design, while also taking care of the aerothermal environment of hypersonic re-entry regime. The external envelope for the fuselage, wing and vertical tail is defined based on aerodynamic considerations and mission profile for the wing and mission profile for the vehicle. The critical loading events such as transonic, maximum dynamic pressure and longitudinal acceleration are defined by mission as in launch vehicles. To avoid TPS tiles from debonding, panels of the vehicle need to have a deflection restricted to a max of 1 mm for a given tile width. The vehicle also needs access points for subsystems and joints. The external profile needs to be smooth since the vehicle will be traveling at hypersonic speeds. Weight is always a constraint on all vehicles and especially for hypersonic flying vehicles to ensure adequate Mach number is achieved as well as for stability. The fuselage, wing and vertical tail are the main structural members and aileron and rudder the control surfaces. Features like stiffness, stability, integration requirements, and manufacturing feasibility drive the design of structural members, that is, the positioning of bulkheads, longerons, spars, and ribs in the fuselage and wing. The vehicle is made up of integrally stiffened panels due to their efficiency and weight savings and lower number of joints in assembly. Bulkheads and longerons are positioned considering the interfaces for wing and vertical tail in the fuselage. The RLV wing contains 2 spars and 4 ribs, top and bottom panels, and wing to fuselage attachment lugs. Spar spacing was derived based on leading edge chord length at the front spar and control surface chord length at the rear spar and the landing gear for future vehicles. Fuselage and wing, as I said earlier, are made of aluminum alloy which has a high specific strength, stiffness and easy manufacturability. Nose cap again is made of carbon-carbon composite with a silicon carbide coating. Vertical tails, rudders of 15 CDV6 steel with their leading edge made of Inconel 718. Ailerons are made of titanium alloy and the leading edges of wings are made with 15 CDV6 steel. Flight of the TDV is controlled by the navigation guidance and control system. The navigation system design is based on the accuracy requirement during the landing phase. Since the RLV will land autonomously, positional accuracy of 50 meters along the runway and 5 meters across is needed. Altitude accuracy of 1 meter and a velocity of accuracy of 0.5 meter per second is also needed. The MMC, the Mission Management Computer, computes navigation information from sensor data and generates steering, control and sequencing commands. Control commands are routed through the stage processing system to the actuators through the control electronics package. NGC is a dual redundant cross-trap system to handle subsystem failures. Communication between MMC and other elements is via a MIL standard 553 bus. Inertial Navigation System INS along with Global Positioning System GPS aided navigation system GAINS, which provides position and altitude accuracy of 50 meters and a velocity accuracy of 0.5 meter per second is used. During landing, a radar altimeter is used which gives an altitude accuracy to 1 meter. The INS is made of 3 accelerometers along the 3 orthogonal axes and 2 accelerometers in row-yaw plane provide fail operational redundancy in yaw and roll axes. The onboard computer processes the data from inertial sensors for closed-loop guidance and control. It computes body rates in quaternions, position, velocity and altitude, inertial velocity and acceleration, and air data parameters. To improve accuracy over INS-based navigation, a GPS is used via a GAINS computer that works with the mission management computer. Wind profile data is recorded prior to launch and is used with atmospheric properties and aided navigation data to derive air data parameters, that is the angle of attack, side slip angle, bank angle, dynamic pressure, relative velocity, and Mach number. During descent, wind effects are prominent and estimation of air data parameters is less accurate. Ceramic servo accelerometer package, which consists of 6 ceramic servo accelerometers mounted in skewed triad hexad geometry is used. The data from the CSAP is used by the MMC to generate lateral acceleration numbers. During landing, the radar altimeter is used to correct any error in altitude. An FADS or a flush air data sensing system is a mission critical subsystem where orifices which are flush with the surface of the vehicle are used. It makes use of surface pressure measurements from the nose cap of the vehicle for deriving air data parameters such as angle of attack, side slip angle, Mach number, etc. The work done for the FADS for the RLV will be carried over and developed further for use in the next gen stealth fighter AMCA. The guidance and control system demands an accuracy of less than 1 degree for these parameters. The Mach number and dynamic pressure are used by the control system for gain scheduling and also for switching of control to the aerodynamic control surfaces. The accuracy demanded in Mach number and dynamic pressure for meeting the present performance is less than 5% of the measured value. FADS enables sensing of more pressure measurements than minimally needed to determine the flow angles and also to minimize the pressure measurement error used in the estimation of these parameters. In general, FADS is intended to work at altitudes below 35 to 40 kilometers. The low magnitude of the nose cap pressure limits usage of FADS at higher altitudes. The guidance and control system of re-entry vehicles mainly relies on air data parameters derived from the INS for altitudes above 40 kilometers. These estimates tend to be erratic at lower altitudes due to wind effects and other errors of the navigation system used for deriving these parameters. For example, side slip angle estimated using the INS system can be significantly different from the true side slip angle in the presence of crosswinds. The erroneous side slip angle, when fed back to the flight control system, can severely affect flight dynamics of the re-entry vehicle. Therefore, the exclusive use of inertial measurement systems for air data computations can lead to significant limitation in the performance of the vehicles under typical operation conditions, especially at lower altitudes. The measured pressures are a function of free stream static pressure, impact dynamic pressure, local angle of attack, and side slip. Since there are 4 air data states and a calibration parameter to be estimated, at least 5 independent pressure measurements must be available to derive the entire set of data. This puts minimum number of pressure ports at 5. Even though minimum number of ports is 5, a configuration having a total of 9 ports was selected. This was done to provide adequate redundancy and to facilitate computation of parameters even after failure of a pressure sensor. The pressure ports are arranged in a crucific fashion with 5 ports in the vertical and the 4 remaining in the horizontal meridian. Air data parameters are needed by the OBC onboard computer every 20 milliseconds. The electronics that performs this computationally intensive algorithm for generation of air data parameters makes use of a digital signal processor. Let's take a look at the guidance and control of the TDV itself. During ascent, the TDV is similar to a conventional launch vehicle, where altitude-based open-loop steering with a pre-stored profile is used. The vehicle coasts for a fixed time after booster burnout to achieve the favorable dynamic pressure for separation. After booster separation, the TDV continues ascent flight and reaches a peak altitude. During this regime, the guidance orients the vehicle's angle of attack from 0 degrees to a predefined value at a constant rate. Side slip and bank angle are commanded to 0 degrees. Altitude control during liftoff phase in pitch yaw is achieved using secondary injection thrust vector control SITVC systems and roll by reaction control systems RCS. Once the dynamic pressure builds up, pitch yaw and roll control are achieved by deflecting the fins driven by electro-hydraulic actuators. In the re-entry phase, the angle of attack is commanded using predefined Mach versus angle of attack profile stored on board. This profile is generated meeting constraints such as dynamic pressure, heat flux, load factor, and trim capability. Side slip and bank angle are commanded to 0 degrees. Below Mach number 2, the vehicle is commanded with normal acceleration commands from the table stored on board. The maneuvers in this phase are rate limited to a predefined Mach number based rate limit table. Pitch and roll control is achieved by 2 ailerons and yaw by 2 rudders. Unlike conventional launch vehicles where pitch, yaw and roll plane dynamics are decoupled, in RLV it is highly coupled and hence a multi-input multi-output design is used. After booster separation, TDV coasts and reorients itself for the approach. The TDV coasts to an altitude of 70 km. Ailerons are used to control pitch and roll dynamics, and RCS is used to control yaw, as the high angle of attack renders the rudder ineffective. At the end of reorientation, time-based gain scheduling is adopted as the angle of attack reduces, rudder effectiveness improves. In the next phase, once the rudder comes out of the shadow of the fuselage and becomes effective, it is used for active yaw control. The TDV is then completely controlled using aerodynamic control surfaces, and RCS is used in backup mode. Two-dimensional gain scheduling based on Mach number versus dynamic pressure is used. The TDV experiences maximum heat flux at this point in flight. In the approach and landing phase, closed-loop guidance commands are provided to steer the vehicle to a desired landing point. This is selected online based on the energy available. The approach and landing phase guidance includes an online trajectory design and a path controller to track the planned trajectory. The entire approach and landing phase trajectory is generated on board at the start of this phase. The trajectory is divided into horizontal and vertical planes. Vertical dynamics is controlled by commanding normal acceleration, and the horizontal dynamics is controlled by bank angle commands. The algorithm features include retargeting, such as online selection of landing point based on the range to be covered, safe mode guidance for extreme performance variations, and dynamic normal acceleration command limit to steer the vehicle to fly in a safe angle of attack envelope. At the start of this phase, Mach number reduces below 2 and altitude below 20 km. During this phase, wind velocities significantly influence estimation of aerodynamic angles. So in place of aerodynamic angles, acceleration is sensed and commanded by guidance for attitude control. Pitch plane design is done as in a conventional launch vehicle. All the 8 electro-hydraulic actuators are powered from a common power source, hydraulic power pack. High power brushless DC motor is used to drive the hydraulic pump, and high energy lithium ion battery unit is used to power this brushless DC motor. A trajectory simulation software SITARA, which stands for Software for Integrated Trajectory Analysis with Real-Time Applications, incorporating all features for validation of the NGC system and for mission performance analysis, was developed at ISRO. It simulates the 6 degrees of freedom, both translational and rotational motion of reusable launch vehicles, along with vehicle subsystem characteristics. The software simulates the environmental conditions such as Earth's gravity, atmosphere and wind characteristics, and vehicle characteristics such as propulsion. A full-size representative system integration test rig known as Iron Bird was designed and built with the primary focus to validate flight actuation systems and associated electrical systems. The test segment reduces the development risk by testing fully integrated systems prior to integrated vehicle level tests, and also provides a platform for evaluation of the system and subsystems. The next flight of the TDV will be conducted at the Aeronautical Test Range in Karnataka. This test will provide guidance in automatic landing as well as landing gear deployment testing. It was planned for the last quarter of 2019 has been delayed thus far. The TDV will be carried using a helicopter, likely a Chinook, and released at a distance of 4 to 5 kilometers from the runway with a horizontal velocity. The TDV will then glide and navigate towards the runway and land autonomously with its landing gear deployed at the airfield. The X-40, a scale test model of the Boeing X-37B, was tested similarly. A transport helicopter, again a Chinook, carried the vehicle and then dropped it from an altitude of 15,000 feet. The vehicle was able to navigate and land successfully on the main runway at Edwards Air Force Base. The Chinese want to compete and surpass the Americans in all high-tech areas. They've been hard at work to obtain a TSTO solution on the back of their voluminous work on hypersonics, boost glide vehicles, which we'll cover in a future video. China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation CASIC is one of the big two Chinese aerospace conglomerates and China's main missile manufacturer. In 2016, one of the projects launched by them is the Tangyong, a reusable two-stage to orbit TSTO spaceplane with horizontal takeoff and horizontal landing. It is proposed to have a turbine-based combined cycle for the first stage. University of Xiamen, in collaboration with the Chinese startup Space Transportation Company, tested the Jiangeng 1, called a double wave rider by a professor at the university because it rides two shock waves, one on its belly and the other in the air inlet duct for its ramjet engine. The 8.7 meter long Jiangeng 1 has a wingspan of 2.5 meters and is part of the development of the larger future Tianxin 1 vertical takeoff horizontal landing reusable launch vehicle. Yet another project is from the first research institute of the Chinese Academy of Aerospace and Aerodynamics, which conducted a wind tunnel experiment in which the second stage aircraft freely detaches from the first stage of a two-stage to orbit spaceplane. The first stage will provide power to the spaceplane upon takeoff, and when it reaches a certain height and speed, the second stage will detach from it and power itself further into space, and the first stage will just land like a normal plane. Despite many statements from the Chinese that these programs are for peaceful purposes, there is a very strong dual nature aspect to them as well. Like the Boeing X-37B program, it is very likely that whichever Chinese program is successful, it will naturally be exploited in the intelligence and military domains as well. There's no point in beating around the bush. Not to be left behind, the European Space Agency also has a similar program in the works called Space Rider. This vehicle has similar aims to provide reusable, reliable, low-cost space access. ISRO has also been working on an airframe integrated scramjet engine called a HAVA. It'll be an integrated scramjet engine and will be tested sometime in the next few years. It'll be a lifting body hypersonic vehicle boosted by an Admire booster to an altitude of 44 kilometers, which will then glide down to 24 kilometers at Mach number of 6. The objective is to demonstrate an accelerating flight of a hypersonic vehicle with scramjet engine power from Mach 6 to 7 in 250 seconds at constant dynamic pressure. The final aim is to design a two-stage to orbit system powered by an air-breathing combined cycle engine. The HAVA will use a hydrocarbon-based fuel, Isorocene. System engineering and design for this has been completed apparently. Fabrication of the heat-sink version of the scramjet test combustor, configuration of the air intake column opening mechanism, and effervescent Isorocene injector was also completed. Hot test of gaseous hydrogen gaseous oxygen based dump igniter has also been done. A successful flight test would enable a full-fledged RLV design to get going finally. Thank you for watching. Please like and share this video across all social media. Please also hit the subscribe button for more such videos on our channel. The next one will be on hypersonics.